What's going on, everybody? I'm your host, Ben Ballion, back with another episode of the Sports Pod. In today's episode, I'm going to talk about the New York Mets outlook as they enter the month of September. And this is a really pivotal month of September. They're hovering around 5 games out of the division, about 5 games up on the final wildcard spot. Before I get into this episode, I just want to recognize my month-long absence during the month of August. I was enjoying my final month of summer vacation. I was in and out of the state of New Jersey, but we're back now. Football season is upon us, and we got a MLB playoff push. Before we know it, it's going to be time for the Knicks to start up. So we're back, getting back on track, and we're going to start today with a little episode about my New York Mets. I'll get into all of it on the other side of the intro. Hit it.
DiVincenzo at 3. Bang! Bang! At the wall, he jumps. It's gone. He did it. He did it. Pete Alonso with the most memorable home run of his career.
All right, getting into the episode and starting with what the Mets have to do if they want to take the National League East right out of the Phillies' hands. As it stands right now, Tuesday, September 2nd, the Mets are 5.5 games out of the division, but they have a 4-game series in Philadelphia that starts next Monday, so there is still a chance. But before all that, the Mets need to beat the teams they're supposed to beat. Just recently, they've lost series to the Nationals and the Marlins. Well, before this season comes to a close, they're going to have multiple chances to redeem themselves, one against the Nationals and one against the Marlins. You need to take both of those series. They also play the Rangers, but the Rangers are no slouch of a team. That's a team that is going to put up a fight. I expect the Mets to win all 3 of those series, though. You need them. Every game down the stretch matters so much right now as you're trying to come back in a division where it's a long shot for the Mets to win the NL East at this point in the year. It is not very likely that the Metropolitans are able to come back and snatch that NL East title out of the hands of the Phillies, but there is still a way to do it. As I mentioned, there is a 4-game series between these teams coming up, and the Mets have sort of a soft schedule. I mean, it's not soft. They do have one of the tougher schedules in the league, but I do think the Mets benefit from playing harder competition. They seem to win more games when they're playing against good teams. I think these last 3 series have been the perfect example of it. Going back to the end of August, where the Mets opened a 3-game set with the Phillies at Citi Field on August 25. The Mets won 13-3, 6-5, and 6-0 in those 3 games, sweeping the Phillies out of New York. Then the Marlins come to town. The Marlins are the worst team in the National League East. They are not very good. The Marlins beat the Mets 7-4 on Thursday night. Then the Mets recover and win 19-9 on Friday night. It was Jonah Tong's debut, so it was good to win that game. Tong looked solid. I'll get to him and Nolan McLean, who has been a revelation late in this season, later in the episode. Then on Saturday, the Marlins win 11-8 and another high-scoring game, and on Sunday, they win 5-1. So you go from playing the first-place team in the NL East to playing the third-place team in the NL East, and it's just 2 completely different teams that came to play for the Mets. And when I say first place, the Mets are only 5.5 games behind first place. But the Marlins, the Mets are 10 games up on. So it's a little bit more stark than if it was first, second, and third are all separated by 3.5, 4 games, something like that, like the NL West is right now. I don't know if it is right now. San Francisco's 9 games back, so it's not anymore. But there was a point in time where that NL West was just a jumble between the Padres, the Dodgers, and it was really the Diamondbacks who were the other premier team of that division. But the Giants are trying to make a push to the wild card, and former Mets prospect Drew Gilbert is at the center of that. He's come out, and he's been a real contributor for that team. But getting back to what I was saying about the Mets benefiting from stiff competition this week against the Tigers, there have been 2 games in this series so far. First, on Monday, September 1st, Labor Day, the Mets win 10-8, another high-scoring game for this Mets offense, which has been so good. And then tonight, they win 12-5. Where is this against the teams like the Marlins? Where is this against teams like the Nationals? It doesn't make sense to me. How the offense can go from being so good against rock-solid pitching, but then just be awful against a relatively non-competitive team. And the offense has been good. Even in that Marlins series, they scored a considerable amount of runs. I do think a lot of the blame has to go on the pitching. And I think the pitching is just exhausted at this point in the year. I mean, in April, in May, in June, the Mets were so reliant on especially the bullpen. How many times were we saying, oh, what a save, Oscar Brazaban coming in to bail Clay Holmes out in the 5th inning. Oh, Reed Garrett coming in to bail out Kodai Senga in the 6th. The starters just don't give you enough length. David Peterson is really the only guy that does it. And now I would add Nolan McLean to that mix, as he's thrown 4 starts, all being quality starts, and 2 against very tough competition in the Tigers, who are the top team in the American League, and the Nationals, who are the leaders of the National League East. Those are 2 rock-solid playoff teams. Nothing is changing that. I'll get to McLean more as the episode wanes, but I think it's more on Sean Manaea and Kodai Senga, 2 guys that if you asked me what they were going to do before the start of this year, I would have told you that they were going to be the 2 most dominant pitchers on this Mets staff. Well, it's been quite the opposite as of late, starting with Kodai Senga. Since returning from the IL in late July, he's had a 5+ ERA. That is not going to cut it on a playoff team. That is not going to cut it, especially on a team that is looking to make a World Series run. This Met team isn't just happy to be in the playoffs like they were last year. This Met team has expectations now, and that's the difference between a first-year playoff team and now a second-year playoff team. There are expectations. Sean Manaea has also crumbled under what pressure there's been this year. I mean, I don't think there was a ton of pressure on Manaea. He came in the second half last year and dominated. He took the league by storm. That cross-body action, I just don't think he's been able to replicate it. I definitely do think that his injury had something to do with it. I think there's a surgery that he could get that would fix everything, but obviously he's not going to get it right now. But if you're telling me, all right, who are your 3 starters for a potential wildcard series? Because if I had to guess right now, I think the Mets are going to wind up in a wildcard series. Game 1, David Peterson. He's been the ace of this staff. I don't think there's a doubt about it. He's given you the most length. I know he's coming off a really rough outing where he just didn't have it against the Miami Marlins. I think he only lasted 2 innings. It was either 2 or 3 innings, and I know he allowed 8 runs. Not good enough. That's not at all what we've seen out of Peterson this year. I expect him to bounce back in his next outing. But game 2, right now, I'm going Nolan McLean. He has shown such poise, such promise, and just such a dominance out there this year. It seems like he has been in the majors for 3 seasons despite only making 4 starts. I saw a video. It was an overlay of his sinker and I think his curveball today. I think Pitching Ninja put it out. It was just disgusting. Both of them started on the outer half of the plate. The curveball, which is breaking inside to a lefty, ended up all the way on his hands. And the sinker was just way off the plate. It's nasty what Nolan McLean is able to do. The way he's able to spin a baseball is just pure gross. He's been so good, and I think I am turning to him in a game 2. I think he's been that good, and he's showed me enough early in his career that he's the game 2 starter for this team. Now, game 3 is where it gets interesting because I can't turn to Jonathan yet. He's only made 1 start, and despite only giving up 1 earned run, at the end of the day, the Marlins did put 4 runs up against him. You have a guy like Sean Manaea who's done it in October for your team before. You have a guy like Kodai Senga who has showed so much promise in a Met uniform at times. He's shown flashes. But then you also have Clay Holmes, who in his first season being transformed from a closer to a starter, has shown flashes, has also shown that he can't give you enough length as of late. And in the playoffs, at least one starter moves to the bullpen. I think Clay Holmes meets the criteria to be coming out of the bullpen. But let me preface that by saying I don't want him coming in late in games. He has shown time and time again in New York as a Yankee that he can't handle that pressure. He's just not able to do that. And it's okay. Some players just aren't built to deal with that pressure, to deal with all those eyeballs watching you, to deal with the lights shining down on you. Clay Holmes just isn't that guy. I think he's better as a starter, or maybe in the playoffs as an opener. Maybe as an opener, he'll give you 3 innings, maybe not go the full length of a starter, but you split time between him and maybe Tong, maybe Manaea. And honestly, what I think would suit him best would to be piggybacking off your Game 3 starter or Nolan McLean. I think you save him as break glass in case of emergency, where if Nolan McLean is in trouble early in his start, or whoever you decide to go with for Game 3, if I had to guess, it would be Sean Manaea. If Manaea struggles early in Game 3, you can hit the panic button, you could turn to Clay Holmes, and Clay could be able to give you 4 to 6 innings of solid pitching. I don't think that's crazy to say, because Holmes has done it all year. The Mets are in a really interesting spot because we've seen at times this year against good competition that they can stand up to the bullies. I know they just have the number of the Phillies, so I don't know if that's the greatest example, but right now we're watching it where they are dominating the Detroit Tigers, who are the best team in the American League. Looking back, earlier in the season, I think they either split or took a series from the Dodgers. Here from June 2nd to June 5th, they split against the Dodgers. That is another team, and that was before the Dodgers had their collapse. I mean, they haven't been very good as of late. They're still going to be fine. I expect them to pick up right where they left off come October. Then in May 9th to May 11th, they beat the Cubs in a series. The Cubs are another playoff team. The Yankees, they split the season series with the Yankees. I mean, here again, in the series against the Dodgers in May, they take that series. They have played well against stiff competition. The Blue Jays, I know this one was real early in the year, but they took a series against the Blue Jays from April 4th to April 5th. I think that was really before the Blue Jays got things rolling. But they are playing extremely well against good teams. And honestly, once you're in the playoffs, you have a chance to make some noise. I feel like every year since we've seen this expanded playoff with 3 wildcard teams, there has been a wildcard team in the NLCS, the ALCS, or even a couple years back when both the Diamondbacks and Rangers were wildcard teams. The Mets did it just last year. They took the Dodgers to 6 games in the NLCS after being a wild card team. It's not out of the picture to make a deep run despite being a wild card team. So I could talk about how the Mets are going to win this NL East, how they're going to storm back to take the division from the Phillies. But at the end of the day, I don't think that it is the end-all, be-all to win the division. In fact, I think it could benefit the Mets if they do have to play in the wild card, because it keeps them in rhythm. It gets them warmed up to the playoffs. I trust a lot of players on this team in big moments, a couple of those being the 3 big guys at the top of the lineup: Francisco Lindor, Juan Soto, and Pete Alonso. And for the people that continue to push this Juan Soto is having a down year narrative, go check the numbers, because he has quietly turned things around and he is firing on all cylinders right now. I think his average is either in the high 240s or he's crept above 250, which, yeah, that's a little bit on the lower side. You'd want that to be higher. And yeah, he's striking out a lot more than normal for Juan Soto, but he leads the league in walks. He's up to 37 homers. He's finally hit a homer that scores more than 2 runs. He hasn't hit a 3-run homer yet, but he has hit a grand slam. He's getting on base, and at the end of the day, he's just producing. His OPS is now above 900. That was the one I was looking for. Soto is quietly having a really, really good season. And I think a lot of it, and this is something I saw online, is when a superstar player is not playing for your team, you really only see the highlights. When Juan Soto was in Washington or when he was in San Diego, you're tuning into SportsCenter and you're seeing, oh, Juan Soto 3 for 5 with a homer tonight. But you're not seeing the games where it's, oh, Soto 1 for 5, 0 for 4, 3 strikeouts. Oh, Soto couldn't get it going. He's been slumping over the last week. Those are the things you see when he's on your team. You see the human element of the player, where previously, and I think it's a little different because Soto was in New York, and a lot of fans do pay attention to both the Mets and the Yankees. Maybe not equally, but both teams are in the eyes of a lot of people. You see it a little bit more, but I don't think you see it, you don't pay attention to it as much when he's on your team. Because when he's with the Yankees and you know it's a rental year, you know he's only going to be in the Bronx for 1 season, you're like, oh, how good would it be to have this guy on my team? He was 3 for 5 with a homer and a double today. And you're not really paying attention to that week-long slump, to that 2-week-long slump, because you're just tuned in to the good side of him. And that's where Mets fans have to back off, because at the end of the day, Juan Soto is going to be a New York Metropolitan for the next 15 seasons. Get used to him. But I don't want to focus on a lot of the negatives of Juan Soto right now, because the offense is finally percolating after such a brutal stretch between the end of June and pretty much all of July. They had a breakout month of August where they set a couple franchise records. I think one was most homers for a team hit in a month. One might have been most runs scored as a team in a month. That is huge. The Mets needed that kind of month, and it gets them back on track. Now they got to parlay that into a hot September, and that September's just got to be a tune-up for what's to come in October. Now moving back to some of the pitching. Actually, one more thing I want to hit on. Jesse Winker is presumably done for the season, as he's going to be shut down from all baseball activities. His oblique strain has turned into back tightness during his rehab start. But I do think there's a silver lining in this. Although Jesse Winker is that fiery personality, that gamer, that jerk that you don't want to play against, but you love when he's on your team, Jeff McNeil and Brett Baty have both been very, very good for the Mets this year. And I would like to continue to see them both get consistent at-bats, which they're going to now with Winker done for the year. One will play DH against a righty, and the other will play second base. McNeil will likely be playing second base every day, and Baty will be the DH when Vientos or Mullins or whoever. I guess Mullins won't be DHing now because Tyrone Taylor is on the IL, but Starling Marte, who has had a really comeback 2025 season, is not in the lineup. Now moving over to the pitching. The Mets, and I talked about this early in the episode, but the Mets relied so heavily on this bullpen early in the year that they just feel burnt out. Outside of Edwin Diaz, who has been very good for the Mets for the better part of 2025, I don't really think there's a guy that was on this roster that I'm like, oh, I've got to see him pitch. With that said, though, I would continue to trust Ryan Stanek in a playoff game, because Ryan Stanek is an absolute gamer. He's a guy that I can trust to go out there and get me 2 or 3 big outs in a playoff game. I can trust Ryan Stanek to come in the 6th or the 7th inning and get me a big out. Stanek can do that for me. Because if you remember last year when the Mets acquired him at the deadline, he didn't have a very impressive second half. He struggled, but when that clock turned to October, it was like a switch flipped in Ryan Stanek's game, and he captured the hearts of so many Mets fans, and he stole the souls of so many opposing batters. But the other aspect of this bullpen is Ryan Helsley has been such a failure. He's just been brutal ever since putting on a Met uniform. And hey, maybe he's a guy that can't handle the pressure of New York. Maybe he just has to get adjusted. But as of right now, down the stretch of this season, Carlos Mendoza cannot turn to Ryan Helsley in the 8th or 9th innings of a game. The Mets need to trust some other guys. Tyler Rogers has been very good. Gregory Soto, who the Mets didn't really trade much for and didn't expect to be a back end of the bullpen guy, has been awesome since taking the trip from Baltimore up by 95 to New York. The Mets have made some really good bullpen moves, but Ryan Helsley has just not been it, man. And I just don't want to see him pitch. I'm not excited anytime he enters the game. And really, the only time I want to see him right now is in the mop-up spot. The Mets need to develop Helsley, get him back on his feet in that spot, because I do think if they're going to make a World Series run, they're going to need him in one way or another. I don't think they hoist the Commissioner's Trophy at the end of the year without Ryan Helsley getting at least 2 or 3 big outs, at least coming into 1 or 2 games in huge spots. I think Ryan Helsley does have to be a factor on this team. I just don't know how much the Mets can trust him because he's been awful. All right, now transitioning into some of the starters and some of the young starters at that. Nolan McLean. I talked about him early in the episode, but I want to bring him back up. 4 starts, 4 quality starts, 2 against surefire playoff teams, and another one against the Mariners, who are no slouch in their own right. As it stands, right now, Seattle is second in their division, the AL West, 3 games behind the Astros, but they're holding on to the 3rd wild card spot, a game and a half up of the Texas Rangers, who the Mets will also play before the season is over. So I just completely lost my train of thought. Oh, McLean has made 4 starts, 3 against teams that have a good chance at going to the playoffs. That's huge. And I mentioned it. His poise, his demeanor out on the mound, it's like he's a seasoned vet. Honestly, that's what it is. And the other team he's faced is the Braves, and he dominated in Truist Park, which is a great sign because it seems like he doesn't have the demons of that just horrid House of Horrors field. I hate every time the Mets go there. And the good news is that the Mets don't have to go back to Atlanta this season. They don't have to play a big series in Truist Park. That is absolutely massive for the Mets, despite games 161 and 162 last year. Really, game 161 where they clinched a playoff spot. Despite that game being so just impressive and seeming like it exercised the demons, the Mets did not have much success down in Georgia this year. So Nolan McLean, yeah, he's been awesome. His pitches move like no one's business. His fastball is touching high 90s, 98, I believe is the number he's touching. But he's also got that just no personality. He's almost Jacob deGrom-like in that matter, where he's just going to show up, he's going to pitch, he's going to shut your team down, and he's not going to show emotion. He's going to work when it's his day to pitch, when it's his turn in the rotation. He knows it's game day, and he knows what he has to do. Where on the other hand, Jonah Tong likes to have some fun out there, where I think Tong is really the yang to McLean's yin. They match each other's personalities so well, almost like Syndergaard, who was really fiery. And Tong and Syndergaard don't have similar personalities by any stretch of the imagination. The thinking is that Syndergaard was the emotional pitcher where he would get hyped up like Tong. Tong likes to have fun. And McClain is all about business. Nobody's knocking him off his path. But what I saw out of Jonah Tong in his first start was that there's promise. I just don't know if he's a major league pitcher yet. Realistically, he relies on two pitches. His fastball, which he uses 61% of the time, and the changeup, which he uses 25% of the time. The other pitch he uses semi-often is his curveball, 13%, and he rarely throws a slider. It's at 1% of the time. I just don't know how long that's going to last before batters start to catch on to his pitch tunneling, when he's going to throw the fastball, when he's going to throw the changeup. Because without that third pitch that he is throwing, that he's not throwing, I guess would be the terminology, that often, I feel like hitters are going to catch on to him, and hitters are going to be able to pulverize him eventually. So I wasn't too happy. I wanted Tong to come up because I wanted David Stearns to keep infusing youth into this rotation that desperately needed it. They were in such a rut. They needed some fresh faces in that rotation, and Tong and McClain have provided a spark. I'm excited to watch Tong's next start and see what he could do against I believe, let's see, when is he next slotted to pitch? Is he going to go tomorrow? If it's going to load for me. He pitched Friday night, so for 5 days off: Saturday, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday. He'll either go Wednesday or Thursday, I believe. And the other thing, as it's slated I think he's going to pitch Wednesday, Mendy said. As it's slated right now, we're going to get Nolan McClain versus Jacob deGrom under the lights of Citi Field on Friday night. Actually, I think it's a home game for the Mets, but don't quote me on that. That's going to be insane. Nolan McClain, the future, the prospect, the new age Jacob deGrom, if you will, versus deGrom, the seasoned vet who's seen it all and done it all, both in a Met uniform and not in a Met uniform. He's my pick for AL Comeback Player of the Year. By the way, it's going to be pure nails. McClain versus deGrom, I'm going to be tuned into that one. But the one prospect I'm surprised the Mets haven't turned to yet is Brandon Sproat. I mean, it feels like he's been on the precipice of being called up for ages at this point. When are the Mets going to pull the trigger and call up their young fireballer in Brandon Sproat? Or are they going to move off of him this offseason? Because that's another option. They do have plenty of youth pitching, but you can never have enough pitching. That's one of the mantras in baseball that I think every team should live by. And if the Mets move off Brandon Sproat, fine, whatever. It seems like he doesn't fit their long-term plan as it stands right now. And if he doesn't, move off him. Trade for him, recoup with some prospects. But if he does fit your plan, I mean, there's no problem with service time now. There's no problem where he's going to get a bigger contract. There's a spot in the bullpen for him if you want to move him to the pen. Or you could also give Clay Holmes some turn in the rotation off. You can go every other spot in the rotation with Holmes. He's already thrown way more than his career high in innings. So I wouldn't mind seeing Brandon Sproat. And the last thing I want to talk about this episode is Francisco Alvarez, who has shown incredible toughness, incredible grit, and really just a will to win. He's been so inspiring for the Mets this year because he struggled early on in the season. He got sent down. It feels like Endy Chavez just completely screwed him over, but he got his swing right back down in AAA in Syracuse. So the Mets called him back up. He finally seemed to be getting his swagger back, but then he sprains his thumb. And then on a rehab start, he breaks his pinky on a hit by pitch. It just sucks. The timing is so awful because he was getting his swag back. He was getting it going. And the Mets are going to need him for a playoff run. Torrens has been better since Alvy went down, but he certainly hasn't been good enough. the Mets are going to need their starting catcher if they want to make a serious run at the World Series. Sign, sealed, and deliver. That's it. So I hope Alvarez can get back to Citi Field, get back to Queens for a potential playoff run this season, because if he can't, the combination of Hayden Senger and Luis Torrens just doesn't do it at the catcher position for me. But overall, recapping the episode, the Mets aren't completely out of the mix in the NL East just yet, but it's going to take a lot, and it starts by taking at least 3 out of 4 in the series against Philly next week, and then beating the teams you're supposed to beat. You play the Marlins and the Nationals. You got to sweep both of those series if you want to take the division. But the stiff competition might benefit the Mets because they've played better against good teams this year. The young pitching has been awesome. Nolan McLean has been a revelation. He's the new kid on the block that nobody saw coming, but has turned into one of the brightest young stars in baseball. And Jonah Tong, the other young starter, has promise. And the Mets, I can't tell with them, because sometimes I think they're going to go to the World Series, and other times it seems like they don't have it in them. But whatever the case is, I'm going to be here. I'm back. It's past Labor Day. Football season is on its way, and the playoff push is in full effect for the Mets and Yankees. So make sure you go follow all my socials: Instagram at @thesportspod_Ben, TikTok at @the.sports.pod. And also here on YouTube, you can watch all the YouTube shorts I put out. We're getting back on the grind for football season. And that was the time. It's Labor Day to Memorial Day is really the hot stretch of the broadcasting season, the sports calendar. So it's past Labor Day. It's time to get back on it. Also, if you want a sticker, I have the Sports Pod stickers. I don't think I have any on me right here. Here's one. I'll show up to the camera. You can DM me on Instagram at @thesportspod_Ben. I'll ship them out to you free of cost. And last but not least, if you want to leave me a voicemail, you can do so by dialing the number 848-307-8073. Sorry, it's been a long time since I've said that. Again, that's 847-307-80. Hold up. I got to get this number in order. I'll pop it up on the screen right now of the number to dial. But last but not least, make sure you keep it locked with the Sports Pod.